In this video, I'm going to share with you a presentation that I did for a group of real estate investors overseas, sharing with them my strategies for doing nationwide wholesaling with online lead generation. They were interested in doing deals without having to do cold calling, completely 100% virtually, and creating the ultimate lifestyle business. And so I want to share that video with you so that way you can do the same. So, I started virtual wholesaling back around 2004 ish, something like that, which if I can give you guys perspective, there was no Google Street View back then. If you could imagine that, no Google Maps, none of that. So it was a lot harder than it was, a lot harder back then. And right around 2007, I actually coined the term virtual wholesaling. So I own all the domains. And through the years, I've been involved, right now, everything that we do, and I'm going to show you, is all online marketing. But that's not how I started. So I developed virtual wholesaling and coined it back in 2007. And then I predominantly, for a very long time, was doing direct mail. And I don't know if you've ever seen like the ugly postcards, the third notice, final notice, property notification, and a lot of those. At one point, we were mailing millions of those for ourselves and for our clients. And then I was one of the first. I was one of the first guys to pull a list of tired landlords, how to find cash buyers using public records. And then it was around 2016 that I started with Facebook ads for motivated sellers. And then recently, last year, I started TikTok ads for motivated sellers. And so, there's not really in our niche, there's agencies that do ads, and there's also, real estate investors that do virtual wholesaling. But, pretty much I'm the only one that can do, I know how to do all platforms, Facebook, TikTok, and Google, as well as nationwide wholesaling too, along with that. So I want to make sure, I'm not going to make this a long point here, but I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So number one, I'm curious, I don't know, I can see some of you here by raise of hands. I would assume that most of you know wholesaling in general, right? For the people that I see, can you raise your hands if you guys are familiar with wholesaling, right? Because wholesaling is the predominant strategy that we follow. And I see hands raised here. Okay. So wholesaling obviously is, you got to keep in mind is this, my opinion is that we're in the marketing business. You have two different roads. You could be the most amazing real estate investor, and you know how to slice it and dice a deal 15 different ways. But if you had no leads, then it's going to be tough for you to make money. But you could have the opposite. You could be a subpar real estate investor. You only know a couple things here or there. But if you were able to generate a bunch of leads, then you'll make money no matter what. And so for me, my focus has always been on lead generation. And so with wholesaling, again, it's just we're going out and finding a motivated seller, putting that property in the contract, then finding a buyer that will take over that contract. And then we're putting ourselves in the middle and collecting assignment fee. Oh, let me see. I might mute. Let me mute. If you are unmuted, I would say to mute yourself. Let me just see if I have anybody else. Maybe there's a way. Okay, got it. All right. I got everybody. All right. So now, we know what wholesaling is, right? Conventional wholesaling. So I kind of have to set the groundwork. Okay. So typical wholesaling is you're working in a single market. So you're picking a market that you're going to work in. Because of the nature of picking that market, now you're going to rely on finding the list of property owners that you think might be interested in selling their property at a discount. And you're going to use tactics such as cold calling, direct mail, driving for dollars, bandit signs, etc. And in order to get to those people in that particular area. The negative with that is that typically there's a lot of competition because everybody's doing the same thing. Everybody's targeting the same markets. In terms of scalability, you hit a point of diminishing return because you have a finite list of prospects in that particular area that are interested in selling their property. You tend to be more hands-on in terms of the involvement in that business. And then the cost per lead is generally high because if you're going to do online marketing, like for example, in my local county, Broward County, if we want to do online marketing on Google, in order to get leads in our local county, we have to pay upwards of $500 to $800 per lead in order to get a viable lead. So whenever you're doing local, the cost per lead is also very high. And also you're limited by the types of deals you can do in your area. All right. Now, with regards to now the problem also with some of these strategies like cold calling is that, inherently you're reaching out to people and then you have friction in that particular interaction, right? If you ever done cold calling, the sellers are, how'd you get my number? Who are you? Why are you calling me? And they're just very combative initially until, you get to that, until you could potentially warm them up. So you end up having, kind of like you're not the, you're kind of an annoying pest as opposed to a welcome guest. So the new way, and this is what we're going to be talking about, is just nationwide. So we're doing deals nationwide. We're not going to be doing any of the old school strategies such as cold calling and driving for dollars or anything like that. Um, we're going to be focusing on inbound leads. All right. And then we're also shifting our model from a convincing model to more of a sifting and sorting model. And by that I mean that if you only have a handful of leads that are coming to you, then you're going to need to try to do everything you can with any of those leads that come in because you don't have that many of them. So we want to shift to a model where we have an overabundance of leads. So that way now, because we have so many leads, then we don't have to deal with everyone. If somebody isn't, somebody's an ass, if somebody isn't easy to deal with, if they want too much money, we just say the
Uh-huh.
magic four-letter word, which is next, and then we move on from there. I'm just trying to see. I don't know if I could identify who is the somebody is unmuted, and I'm just trying to see if I could figure that out to mute. Okay. Um, all right, so let's go nationwide wholesaling. So nationwide wholesaling is number one is we're operating across a bunch of different markets. Number two is we're using online lead generation in order to bring leads in. Uh, the next item on that is that we have less competition because, and I'm going to share with you some case studies here. We're going to be targeting areas that are not really targeted by other real estate investors, or maybe there's not that much competition in those areas. It's scalable, easily scalable, because unlike, say, for example, if you're looking at cold calling and you're doing cold calling and you want to do more cold calling, typically either if you don't have to, it's either you have to do it or you have to now hire more cold callers. You have to hire more of them. You got to get more lists, etc. So with online leads, all you got to do is turn on, change the number on the platform to spending a little bit more money tomorrow, and you'll get more leads. And then also with our model, it's completely virtual. So I think that's really one of the key things for you guys. It's a necessity because you're doing deals in the US. Now, when we target nationwide, the other benefit of that is that the cost per lead goes significantly down. And so, we can go from, hey, trying to target a particular area and having lead costs that are, minimum $200 or $300, potentially more, depending on the area, to having leads that could be $15 to $20 a lead. So especially if you're brand new in the business and most if you're brand new to business, one of the things you need is you need practice. You need the repetition of talking to as many sellers as you can, as quickly as you can, so you can get better. So obviously, getting a lot of leads and not having to pay a lot of money for them is key if you're brand new in the business. And then also, the nationwide model enables us to do a variety of different types of deals. And I'll share with you one of the deals that we did recently that is just one of the ugliest things you've ever seen in terms of property. But hey, we were able to make decent amount of money from it. By the way, if you're ready to take your real estate investing, wholesaling business to the next level and avoid cold calling, avoid all those old school tactics, and instead do nationwide wholesaling with online lead generation, I would love to help. Just simply click the link in the description, reach out, and let's see if I could help you implement this system and transform your real estate business. So let's talk about what the first step is. The first step is, if you're operating this model, is picking the platform, right? And this is important because the platform depends on a few different factors, and also depends also on your experience level. So we use all platforms. We use Facebook ads, TikTok ads, and we use Google. And with Google, underneath the umbrella of Google, there is Performance Max, Demand Gen. There's Google Search. There's YouTube ads. So Google, out of all these platforms, I would say if I would rank them in the order of complexity, Facebook is the easiest, then followed by TikTok, and then followed by Google. So Google is the most difficult one to operate. Also, it is the most difficult one to get started with because unlike like if you started a campaign today on Facebook, you'll get leads the same day, right away. With Google, many times, especially with these other type of campaign types such as Performance Max, Demand Gen, you may have to spend a little bit of money to give the account traction. And so for if you're brand new in the business, then it becomes a little bit more difficult on Google. So, again, Facebook is the easiest to start with, great for small budgets. Lead quality can be an issue, but I'll show you how we avoid how we increase our lead quality, and I'll show that to you a little bit later on. TikTok is great, it works very similar to Facebook. There's not that much competition because most of the agencies out there running ads are either running Facebook or Google search. Nobody's really running TikTok, and not many other people know how to run TikTok. It could be a little finicky, meaning that, in Facebook, I can launch a campaign and I get leads the next day, pretty much 95% of the time. TikTok sometimes feels like I don't know if you guys ever experienced one of those old lawnmowers that you kind of pull the switch and it doesn't start, so you have to put it a couple more times. So sometimes on TikTok, we have to start multiple campaigns just to get the ball rolling. And again, as I mentioned before, Google Ads is expensive and competitive, especially search, and it requires a larger budget. So it's really for somebody who's more experienced, I would recommend that. So with any platform, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you tips on in general across all the platforms, and then I'm going to go into each platform individually and do a deep dive to give you a better understanding of how they work and how we build out the campaigns. So in the beginning, in general, I recommend people just start targeting the entire US of A because that's going to do a couple things. Number one, it's going to bring activity into the ad account. So that way the pixel and the ad account understand your target audience. So you want to get in leads as quickly as you can. If you are brand new in the business, you want the volume. You want a large number of leads coming to you. So now you can get better at talking with property owners and analyzing deals and going through that process. And so that's that's why I recommend that. And then at some point, it could be within the first 30 days or so, you could then bring that targeting down, and now you'll be targeting instead of nationwide, you'll be targeting states. So you'll pick, and I'll share with you what my states are. You'll pick, in our scenario, 19 states where predominantly we're doing wholesaling, and you'll narrow that down. It will increase your cost per lead slightly, but it will eliminate some of the more rural areas. Like for example, if you look at a market like a state like Montana as an example, there's only one major metro there. Everything else, there's really nothing. And for example, Nevada, it's the same thing. Aside from Las Vegas, there's really not much else going on over there. So by bringing down to states, then you eliminate some of those other areas. Like for example, these are the top states, the top 19 states that we do deals in. So pretty much, these are like the major states that have good population sizes and also where there's a lot of investor activity. That's what we're looking for. Now, the thing with the way I operate within this model is that, again, think of it as this, transitioning from a selling and closing to a sifting and sorting way of doing business, meaning that how can we generate a large number of leads? So then that way, if you get 50, say you get 50 leads, there's a percentage of those leads that are going to be viable leads, that are going to be leads that would turn into a deal. And let's say out of 50 leads, maybe there might be, you talk to everybody, everybody's interested, but you have the people that want too much money, you have people in the rural area, et cetera, et cetera. You might end up with about 15 or 20 of those leads. So our approach is just forget the rest, focus on the ones that are the most likely to become a deal. And you could not even call a lot of those other people back and do deals with the ones that you have. And then because you know that tomorrow you're going to have more leads and more leads after that. Now, in the beginning, if you're brand new, I would recommend you call everybody to get the practice, but eventually you get to the point where you want less leads to talk to. And so it's really a game of figuring out when a lead comes in, and I'll show you how they come in when we and the information we ask, just figuring out who are the most likely prospects. So actually, this is a screenshot of some of our leads. So you can see here, these are leads that have come in, and you can see that we asked for the asking price. We asked for the occupancy, what the timeline it is for them to sell, the current condition, repairs needed, and their ultimate goal. So, what we want to do is, especially when we're targeting wide, is we want to get as much information as we can because that creates a little bit of friction for them when they're submitting their information, but it makes it easier and better for us when we're analyzing the leads as they come in, because you'll see in a second, some days you might get a couple leads, some days you might get 5 or 6 leads. And you want to be in a position where you quickly identify which could be a deal. And then at that point, then focus on those particular properties. Now, so when we do this type of marketing, we're going to get generally three types of deals. One, we're going to get deals in large cities, large metro areas, which is great. That's what we're going to get those. Number two is we're going to get small towns. I'll give you an example of smaller towns. And a small town is relative. I live in South Florida in Broward County. There's over 2 million people here. So anything less than 2 million is considered a small town. But what I'm talking about is, for example, I don't know, it doesn't show the population here, Midland, Texas, but I'll show you some of the other ones that I have here. But we're doing deals in towns that are 30, 40,000 people, sometimes less. So we don't want to discard that. But we will, and again, the majority of the US, if you think about it, we always think about the big cities, but the majority of the population in the US is in towns that are under 10,000 people. So that's the majority of the US is in these small towns, but many times they go underserved. A lot of times the realtors are not really active in those markets. And so these property owners don't have a lot of options when it comes to selling a property, especially selling a property that, has bad tenants, it's in probate, and all those other things that we know that we can help the owner with. But it becomes difficult for them to find help in these smaller towns because the agents don't really specialize in those type of properties. And then, of course, we'll get the deals that are in the middle of nowhere, like where there's no civilization around, there's like nothing. And at that point, those leads, unless you're brand new, then maybe you should talk to them just to get the practice. But very quickly, you'll probably ignore those leads and move on to the next. And again, the important thing about all these property owners, right, is number one is they reached out to us. They're happy to hear from you. So it's not a combative conversation as a cold call, right? When we call a property owner, it's like, hey, John, this is Chris with National Property Buyer. You filled out a form at our website requesting an offer on your property and you're looking to sell it. Does that ring a bell? Yes, it does ring a bell. Great. So I'd love to get more information about the property and your situation and see if it's a property that we can go ahead and make you an offer on. You have a few minutes and that's it. And now you go right into the conversation versus the typical, if you're doing cold calling, it's like, how you get my number? Who are you? And all that other stuff that you have to deal with. And again, the positioning is these property owners have already filled out a form. They at the front end, they know that, hey, we're investors and we're looking to buy properties at a discount. So already they're coming in under the right mindset of, hey, let's have a conversation. And obviously, not every prospect is going to be a deal, but at least it makes it a little bit easier on the entry point. Um, and again, with all platforms, these are again tips on across all the platforms. Whatever platform you start with, always recommend. Even if you told me, Chico, I can spend $5,000 a month today, I would say no, don't do that because you're going to burn money. And a couple of things. Number one is you want to make sure that you have everything set up correctly on the platform. And so you want to start off small. You want to make sure that the leads are coming in, that they're making their way into whatever system you're using to keep track of the leads, etc. You want to make sure that you don't fall behind because in the beginning you might have two or three leads coming a day, but then a week or 2 weeks later, now you have two or three leads coming in a day. You have leads that you're trying to follow up with that have submitted their information a few days before, and then you have follow-ups that you're trying to get people under contract, and very quickly it could get very busy for you in a matter of a few short weeks. So you want to make sure that you're not putting yourself in a situation where you're generating too many leads, they're going to go uncalled. And then the worst thing ever is when you call a lead and you're like, oh my God, that was a great deal. And you call them and they're like, no, I signed with somebody else. And you're like, man. And only because you didn't reach out to the lead, from a priority perspective. So you don't want to do that. Then when it comes to, and I'll give you some examples here. And I see this all the time with people when you're creating ads for social media. It never wins. It never works when you try to be cute or when you try to, like I always find that it's always best to be direct with the property owners, and I'll show you some of the ads here, and to call out to the audience, hey, do you have a property that needs work and fixing up, and you're thinking about selling that property and you're wondering what's the best way? You can list it with an agent or you could sell it to a cash buyer like me. My name is Chris, and I'll show you what those look like, but always better to go and speak directly to that audience because that's going to enable the platform to go and find that particular person that it's looking for, the target prospect. And then, so these are some of the, like, for example, on Facebook, each platform is different, and I'll go into this. But in Facebook, for example, these are the type of headlines that we use, just very direct and to the point. And then you can see here the primary text to the right just speaks to the particular pain points of the prospect, and what we can do for them. And so again, we always want to call out to the audience. Do you have an inherited property? Do you have a property that needs work and fixing up? And just for everybody's context, our best leads are inherited. We get a lot of inherited properties, properties that need work and fixing up, and vacant, right? Those are like the main three buckets, but we get a lot of inherited deals, and those are always the best because they want to get rid of the property. Most of the time it's vacant and they want to move on. And so it gives us the opportunity because a lot of those properties have a lot of deferred maintenance, which is what we need when we're trying to do a wholesale deal, right? Um, it's very important. And, I always get, uh, we run our ads a particular way. And many times I'll get a client that comes in and they say, hey, my ads are not working. And I'll look at their ads and they might be running with an agency or doing it themselves. And I see things that are just causing them issues. Right now, like especially with Facebook, it's own, Facebook, you can use images and videos. And I'll show you what these look like. But on Facebook, you have to use videos on all platforms. All platforms demand video. But even on Facebook, where you can put images, you're missing out if you don't have videos. And the videos are just you on your phone, or you can hire somebody on Fiverr, vertical, doing a quick 60-second video, and you're publishing them on the platform. And whatever video you create for Facebook will also work for TikTok as well. If you are in terms of images and videos, we use canva.com, canva.com. And then for videos, really you just take them on your phone, as long as you have a phone that's just a couple years old. And then we use CapCut, which is a software you can get, and you can even edit it on your phone, and then and be able to create a video quickly. And again, those are the things that I would say in terms of videos are really, really important nowadays. And that's what we use. We use CapCut, and then in order to make the videos, and then we use Canva in order to create the images. That's another image that we have that we use in our ads. And so that was created using Canva. It's very easy to use. You can watch a YouTube video and be able to. And then now for the ads, many times I'll use ChatGPT to help me write the ads. So even for the ads, including Google ads, and Facebook ads, and then all the headlines and everything else, you can use we'll use ChatGPT all the time in order to just, give us ideas in different ways, and it'll even include all the emojis and everything else. So now let's talk about actually running the ad. So I'm gonna walk through some specifics about all the different platforms. So let's talk about first Facebook ads. Now with Facebook ads use images and videos. So this is a sample of, and again, you want to make these. I see ads all the time, and they look all nice and pretty, and with these, stock photos. You got to make those ads ugly because they have to stand out when somebody's scrolling through. They need to be able to stand out. So the images, if you see these image ads, they don't look that pretty, but that's okay because we meant to get their attention for the person to say very quickly. If you look at any of these two ads on the right, they can quickly know what this is about, and then at that point make a decision to click the button and supply us with their information. And the same thing with the video. If you notice the video on the left, that's me. But again, I do the videos with captions because sometimes people are looking at stuff on their phone with the volume off. And so Facebook, you got to use both images and videos. And then what happens is in uh, Facebook, when you're, and I'll show you, actually, I'll show you this in another slide because I have this in another slide. So Facebook requires images, the video, headlines, as well as primary text, right? And what you could do simply, you can go to ChatGPT and just write into ChatGPT is, hey, you are a world-class copywriter, and I need you to write me Facebook ads for motivated sellers to include headline and primary text. So that way I can run Facebook ads and a seller would be motivated to submit their information. And I want you to speak to all the pain points as well as the benefits of them doing business with me. You do that, and then I would say, hey, make sure to add emojis. And pretty much with that, it will create these ads for you, right? So you don't need to be an expert copywriter. But again, I would rather you spend less time on the ad copy and just do it with ChatGPT and spend more time on the videos and the images because that's what's really gonna get the person to notice the ad and to submit their information. And then now the way it works, every platform is a little bit different. With Facebook and TikTok, okay, in terms of when the customer clicks on the ad and submits their information, Facebook and TikTok have an internal system. Facebook calls it lead forms, TikTok calls it instant forms. They have their own internal system to collect their information. I'm trying to see who is unmuted. I can't figure that out. So if you are muted, um, unmuted. So with Facebook and TikTok, they have their own system internally in order for you to use that system to collect the customer's data. Predominantly, we use that system, either Facebook lead forms or TikTok instant forms. In Google, we have to send them to a web page, and I'll show you how that looks in a minute. But with Facebook, what we do is we ask a lot of questions up front so that that way we get a better quality lead. So, when they click on the ad, they see this. We ask them what type of property it is, single family, duplex, vacant land, mobile home, etc. We ask them if the property is listed with an agent, what's the condition of the property, how soon they would like to sell, the location of the property, and then we also asking for their asking price, who's living at the property, and the reason for them wanting to sell. And then they would supply us all the information. So generally, what we want to do is we want, there's always a balancing act. If you didn't ask all these questions, then your cost per lead would dramatically decrease. But it would be at the cost of potentially getting not the greatest lead. So I would rather err on the side of spending a little bit more money per lead, but yet having a quality lead that has gone through the process to answer all these questions. So that means that they are motivated. Now, whether or not they're reasonable in terms of their price, that's a different story that you have to find that out when you call them. But at least there's an intention on their part to be able to want to get a cash offer. And then just a sample results. So this is a campaign. I want to give you this is an example of a campaign, right? The column on the right is shows $23 per lead on total. And you can see then where it says results, those are the leads that are coming in. So in this particular campaign, this one was running at I think it was running at a budget of $75 a day, and which is for somebody who's already experienced. Um, and they're getting leads at they're getting if you notice here, some days they get one lead, some days they get two, other days four, another day one, another day seven, and that's how it fluctuates. It just some days are better than others, but it does, as you can see here, if you're this client, then you're getting leads consistently, so you always have leads coming in the door submitting their information. And the way that the campaigns are structured is like, for example, on a nationwide campaign, this is another campaign that cost per lead is $20 running nationwide, 33 leads. And then we set up the campaign with two ad groups, one with a bunch of interest and one with no interest. And then we create a dynamic ad, which includes everything, it includes the images, the videos, along with all the ad copy, all that. And then Facebook will decide as it goes out there trying to find your prospect, they'll decide which is if they're going to serve an ad to this particular individual that is a video, that is an image. It all depends on where they're at. If they happen to be scrolling on the Facebook feed, they may not see a video. They might just see an image. If that person that Facebook believes is a good prospect for you happens to be on Instagram, then they might see an Instagram reel. So it does, it gives Facebook the flexibility to figure out where it's going to get the conversion. And this is an example of, again, the type of leads that will come in. I showed you another screenshot. This is another one. So again, the full name, we get, all the contact information, the property, as well as then as many details as we can about the property. So then that way up front, we could do a little bit more sifting and sorting and prioritization of who we're going to contact first. So that's Facebook. Now with TikTok, TikTok is all videos. There's no ad copy. Now with TikTok, obviously the guy on the left is me. The person on the right is not me. I don't have a wig and doesn't have a Halloween costume. But this is Fiverr. I got this lady on Fiverr. I think it was like $100 that I spent in order for her to record the ad. And so in TikTok, again, TikTok is a little bit more finicky. Like for example, I'll give you an example. Recently, a client tried to create an AI avatar ad and completely bombed. Like he spent like $200-300 on TikTok, got zero leads. So then I recorded an ad for him, just me, and that lead started to produce. So it's really like TikTok. It's either nothing or you. It's either like Christmas or it's like a drought. There's no in between. But the creative is a big deal. So the one things that I would recommend is that when you're optimizing these is you create different avatars, right? So you might have a woman, you have a man, you have an older woman and a younger woman and an older man and a younger man, etc. So you cover all the different avatars to figure out what works best. And with TikTok, we use the same principle as Facebook, in which we're using their instant forms, and then we're asking the same information. So the same questions we ask on Facebook are the same questions we ask on TikTok. And again, what type of property it is, the condition, reason for wanting to sell, who's living at the property address, asking price, and their contact information. And we keep them on platform. Now, one thing that comes up with TikTok all the time, I get the question is, Chico, but all my sellers are like 40 plus years old. There's no people on TikTok because it's all younger people. Well, if you look at my conversions here, this is a screenshot for one of our accounts. You can see 20, 32, and 23 conversions on the right. And then a detailed analysis shows on the left the age group. So you can see that the majority of conversions are for people over the age of 55 and 45 to 54. So the older demographic is on TikTok. All right. And keep in mind is this, it used to be that, you know, um, um, you know, it used to be that if somebody wanted to sell the house for cash, they would go on Google and search "sell my house fast," and then all they would do is close their computer and go on about their life because there was no TikTok, there was no Facebook or nothing. But nowadays, that same person that searches "sell my house fast," they go on TikTok and they go on Instagram. So it's looking at it more from like how do you get to that person, right? And wherever they may be, and they're on all these different platforms. An example here of a campaign here, a couple campaigns you can notice. Actually, the other one, let me see. Oh, the other one never got started. The bottom two are the ones that generated leads. You can see that there's a nationwide campaign. The nationwide got leads at $23 a lead. So obviously we're targeting wider. So we're getting a lower cost per lead. And then on the ones that we target the states, in this scenario, it says parentheses 21, meaning that on that one there was 21 states in that particular campaign, and that produced leads at $40 per lead. And then here's another one, 73 leads, 21 states at $27 a lead. So the cost per lead is very comparable to Facebook. And so my recommendation is always to get, if you're going to get Facebook up and running or TikTok, uh, you might as well try both, right? You might as well get both of them because if you have a problem with if one ad account, something happens, maybe the lead flow isn't good a particular week, then you can always modulate between the two different platforms, Facebook and TikTok. And also, there's a lot of volume on TikTok. So here's another one of our accounts that we generated 391 leads at an average cost of $28.88 on TikTok. So there's definitely lots of volume, the same as Facebook. And there's another campaign there, 53 leads at $35, and another one there, 53. Actually, that might be the same one. Okay, so you get the point. And again, the account structure is very much the same with TikTok because of both platforms. TikTok just copied Facebook, but Facebook is a Ferrari and TikTok is the Camry. It doesn't have all the bells and whistles. Sometimes a little bit clunkier, but it's the same thing. And that's pretty much how we run the campaigns as well. Same thing as Facebook. Now, Google ads, right? Google ads, everybody knows Google search, which is somebody types in "sell my house fast," the ad shows up, they go to your website, submit their information. But there's other campaign types. Performance Max is another campaign type that we have success with. And what Google's trying to do is that they want to incorporate search, but they want you to advertise across all the platforms. And they're trying to create campaigns that you put a bunch of stuff into that campaign, meaning you put search ads, you put videos, you put images, and now Google is going to try to find the person, try to find that audience wherever they may be on the Google properties. So they have Performance Max. There's also Demand Gen as well. Demand Gen is more of, most of the traffic there is on the content network on using images, right, for Demand Gen. And there's YouTube ads. Although recently Google made an announcement that they're going to be rolling in YouTube ads or video action campaigns. Are going to be rolling in video action campaigns into the demand gen product. So, right now,
Now,
like you would want to learn demand gen because, next year, YouTube is not going to allow you to create, excuse me, Google's not going to allow you to create a YouTube campaign. And for YouTube, like again with Google, the complexity with Google is there's a couple of things with Google. Number one is that you're going to have a higher cost per lead in general than Facebook, regardless of what you do. Number two is that there's more different campaign types. Each of them require their own, they have their own nuances in order to make them work. And then also, in addition to that, like if you're going to do YouTube ads, you need a YouTube channel. Right. So there's other things and assets that you're going to need. And again, the like for example, this is a copy of our landing page. So with Google, whereas with Facebook and TikTok, you can get away with not having really a great website. It doesn't load fast. It's not the best, but it's not a big deal. Why? Because they're using the lead form in order, the customer's using the lead form to supply you with their information. Whereas with Google, you need a converting landing page. And we do what's called, I think I show it here, maybe not. I could show it on at the end of the call. We have time, but it's a landing page, but then also there's a quiz funnel where somebody types in their information and then it auto populates the address and then ask them a series of questions. And then depending on how they answer, they may or may not become a lead. So for example, for us, we don't do vacant land. And if it's a mobile home, it has to have the land included. So if those two things are, if there's a property owner with a vacant land, or they own mobile home and it doesn't own the land, then our system will automatically remove it, right? So it's done through a quiz funnel software where they won't allow the conversion to come through. So we're not going to get those leads, but we don't want those leads anyway because we can't do anything with it, and we don't want to give a false positive to Google with regards to a particular type of lead that isn't our type of lead. And with Google, this is a campaign, a variety of different campaigns that we're running on this, but you can see the cost per lead on Google is higher, 87, 92, 67, 73. Now, this is across a variety of different campaigns, but overall, net, you'll notice that the cost per lead is higher on Google. So typically, I always recommend Google for those, like if you want to be experienced, and several that have done deals. Otherwise, you end up eating a lot of money unnecessarily because, to a certain extent, you're learning as you're doing the business, right? Now, the interesting thing with Google is that you can target based on audiences. So you can say, for example, I have a screenshot here. You can say, hey, I want to create a customer segment of everybody who has searched for sell my house fast, cash for home, sell my house fast. So if somebody goes into Google and they search sell my house fast, and let's say they may or may not enter their information. Well, now Google knows that that person exists. And what they'll do is they'll target that person in another one of Google's properties. So they may target that person on YouTube. They may target them on the content network. That person may have a Gmail account. So then they'll see the ad when they're browsing through their email. So those are the kind of targeting that Google can do. And it's very robust because they have targeting based on search queries. They also have targeting based on what they call in-market audiences. So for example, so you can say, I want somebody who um who typed in sell my house fast, or sell my house for cash. But now if you think about all those people that are searching for all of that stuff, we buy houses or ugly houses or whatever, sell my ugly house, then Google has it groups them all together into what they call like an in-market audience. And so one of them, for example, is property quick sale. So that's an audience that you could use. And then now you could do is you can layer that audience with you can't use age because it's restricted in the housing category, but you can layer it with say income. So you can say, I want a property, I want Google, I want anybody who you feel is interested in selling their property to a cash buyer. But I don't want you to give me anybody in the high income bracket. I want you to give me anybody in the middle to low income bracket. And so you could do that type of targeting, granular targeting inside of the Google platform when it comes to a lot of these campaigns. So let's say in this scenario, we run these campaigns and then we have leads coming through. So then at the when we're talking to these leads, and I'm sure that a lot of you know this already, but at the end of the day, the simplest things we need to know about any particular lead, right? Because you don't want to spend an hour on the phone with a lead that in the end isn't motivated, isn't going to do anything. Number one is price. And they always have, in our forms, we ask them for a price, but it's very easy to ask them, just even the question of, hey, do you have any flexibility in that price? Because, I know you said you were asking 220 and I got to do the numbers, but I know that, some of the properties we've looked at recently in that area, we have been, buying them for about 120 or so. And the seller will probably say, "Oh no, I would never sell my property for 120." Of course, I wouldn't. No, I wasn't making you that offer. I'm just having a conversation with you. But I know we can't do the 220 that you mentioned there. Do you have any flexibility at all? And many times, just by asking and doing that, you get the seller to come down. Under asking price. So price is on motivation. Hey, why are they looking to sell? Because if there's no motivation, there's really not going to be any way that you can get down on price. And then and I'll show you some examples of kind of, if a seller, if the property is listed on Zillow and Zillow says it's worth 400 and the seller puts on the form that they want 395, it's highly unlikely that you're going to get that reduced to 200,000 or wherever it needs to be. Most of the time it's sellers that are reasonable, meaning that they're almost there in terms of price. We just got to see if we can get it a little bit less and to be able to make a deal. Then the next thing we need to know is just the condition of the property. Because again, we need something wrong. Either we need something that is of pain to them, either in their motivation or in the property, so that now they would consider using us as the way for them to fix that particular problem, right? Without them having to deal with it. And the timeline, because again, there has to be urgency. If the seller doesn't care when they're going to sell, if they could sell a year from now, and it's not really going to be a deal for us, right? Or a situation that we can do anything with. So when a lead comes in, we use, most of the time we don't, um, I didn't put this in the slides, but we will make offers and put properties on the contract without seeing the inside of the property. We never want to tell a seller, "Oh, could you get me photos of the property and that way I can make you an offer?" Because if you say that to a seller and then they happen to see my ad 2 days later. And I don't, and the sellers, they got a phone, they don't know how to work the phone, so they're trying to figure out how to take the photo. And, oh, I got to clean my house first before I take the photos. And now they're delaying. But if I come in and I talk to the seller and I'm not going to get any photos, I'm going to put that property in the contract before you. You're going to lose out on that deal simply because I did not put the obstacle of the seller getting photos. So we never get photos up front. Now, if the seller says, "I got photos, I can send it to you right now," fine, we'll take them. But we don't make that a prerequisite to us making an offer. So most of the time, it's just with Google Street View and the information that we have available in public records. And then we analyze the deal, depending on a couple of different factors, right? Number one is population size. Okay, is it in a large city? Is it in the middle of nowhere, or is it in a small town? If it's in the middle of nowhere, then typically those, we're not going to be able to do anything with. We're probably not going to pay attention to them, and we're going to pay attention to the ones that are in the large city and in the smaller town. And then the next thing we want to do is we want to be able to see if there's yeah, if you're I don't know if you're unmuted. If you want to make sure that the market is active, meaning that, when you go on Zillow and you look for active properties, you see a lot of red dots. If you look at the sales in the last 6 months, you see activity. If you see no red dots, if you see no no yellow dots, then that's a problem, right? Because again, keep in mind is that all the leads you're going to get are leads. If you're operating this model, these are leads in towns some of the towns you have never heard about until the lead came in. So you have no idea what's happening. And so we use Zillow. The only tool we use is Zillow in order to determine what a property is worth and what we can offer. And the element to this whole model, if you think about the model from the perspective of lead flow, underwriting and disposition, meaning that we get the leads. So if you do online marketing, let's say you fix that issue. So now you have the lead flows coming in. And let's say if you know how to do dispo, but the thing that really hurts people a lot is the underwriting, the figuring out, okay, what is that property worth? Because you could, pay too much. You could say no to a deal that could have been a deal, and perhaps you didn't analyze it properly. So the underwriting is a really key. My belief is I don't use formulas. I know a lot of people use like 70% of ARV, less the repairs, less that, in order to figure out what you should offer on the deal. But the challenge with that is that only works within a certain parameter of price point. If you have a property where the property ARV is 95,000, I know I'm going to have to make an offer in the teens, maybe 20s at the most, in order to get that at a reasonable price where I can make some money. So that ARV, the percentage of ARV there is going to be like, what, 30%. So what we do is we manually calculate, okay, if the property is worth 500, if it requires 50K in rehab and the seller's offering it for 315, I want a 15 to 20K assignment. I calculate, okay, if somebody buys it, they have closing costs, they have hard money over 3 months. They're gonna also, when they sell it, they put it with an agent. They're gonna pay a commission and trying to figure out what is that number that potentially that buyer will be able to make after all said and done. And that's kind of how we analyze it. So we kind of figure out what the values are, plug them into a formula so that we can determine, what is that, what's the best that we can do on that, the most that we can offer on that property. And again, we use Zillow 100% of the time. So this is a deal that we did in Enid, Oklahoma. I don't know about you guys. I've never heard of Enid, Oklahoma until the lead came in. My joke is that, my kids are spoiled, right? We make a list of all the vacation spots that they want to visit, and we put in London and Europe and Paris, and we sneak in Enid, Oklahoma, but they never pick it for whatever reason. Nobody wants to go there. But that's Enid, Oklahoma. When we look at that, like it's easy to say, oh no, that's such a small town, not worth it. But look at all the red dots. There's a lot of activity, and so here's a trick that you guys can use because you can see these red dots, but the it doesn't tell the whole story because you don't know how fast that market is moving. What you can do is if you go to Zillow on the upper right hand menu, you can toggle between pending and under contract. So in this particular instance, there's 109 listings, but if I toggle pending, the total inventory of that market is 154, right? So that means that if it's 154, and I'm just taking out my calculator here, so there's a total of it's 154 minus 109. Hold on, 154 minus 109. So there's 45 properties pending, right, in this market. So if you take 45 divided by 154, that means 29% of the 29% of the active inventory is pending. So that's a good number. So when I look at this market, I say, wow, that market has activity. That market, people are buying in that market. So, we kind of make that judgment purely on data, not just necessarily because of the population. And we looked at, Enid, and we looked at how many solds there were in the last 6 months, and there was a lot of solds. So for us, even though a lead might come in for you and you might, initially say, oh, is that really even a viable lead? For us, right away, we can tell it is a viable lead. All right. And again, the the only nuance to this, right, when it comes to when we're analyzing deals, but also too in this market, it's really important that you look at the active inventory, right? Because if you think about it from a broad perspective, as a wholesaler, the way you make money is by offering a better product to a real estate investor that they could otherwise find themselves. If you have a deal that you have in a contract, let's say 3-2 in Enid, and you're going to ask 85,000 as an example. I'm just making up those numbers but let's say that there's just a ton of other 3-2s for 85, 86, 90. Why would they buy the property from you? Because they could just simply go on the MLS and buy one. So, a way to look at it is say, if I put a property in the contract and I add my assignment fee, 15 to 20, our average is 15, right? So let's say I add 20K for the assignment fee. And now I'm gonna go out to the marketplace to investor buyers with this particular price point. Then is that price better than anything else they can get on the MLS? If it is, then that's great because that means that now they're going to perk up their ears when you call because you're going to have legitimately a good deal. Now, when you're looking at though non-disclosure states, which is like Texas is a non-disclosure state, Missouri, where you can't see the sales data, then you have to look at actives. However, in this era where you have some markets like, for example, the west coast of Florida, where you have a lot of inventory, you have to look at actives along with solds because you might look at a 3-2 that you think, oh, this 3-2 fully rehab, I think it might go for 165. But now you see the same 3-2, those are what the solds say. But now you see 3-2s fully rehabbed in that market and now listed for 155. Then you can't pay attention to solds. You have to pay attention to the active because the actives really are the gauge of that market, right? Especially in a flat market or declining market. And also looking at, how quickly a property went pending, right? If a property went pending quickly, then that means it was a good price, and that's a good barometer of price for that market. If you saw a 3-2 that was listed for 160 and it went pending, 3 days, 4, 10 days later, hey, that's a good price for your subject property. But if that property took 2 or 3 months to sell, then that means that, hey, maybe it sold for a lot less than what it was listed for. But it also could be a slow moving market as well. But I think it's important to look at active properties when you're looking at deals nowadays. And again, the when we're analyzing deals, it's okay. Is it a viable lead? Meaning, from everything I said, is it too rural? No vacant land, no mobile home without land, etc. Is it a viable market? That's the next question. So the viable lead is we don't want, um, I guess I put here not too rural, but that merely belongs in the bucket of viable market. So viable lead is it's not vacant land for us. It's not a mobile home without land. And also, generally speaking, we don't deal with listed properties. Next would be is where is it located? If it's in a viable market, it's not rural, etc. Then the next thing would be is, hey, what is that property good for? Is it going to be for a rental, for somebody to buy as a rental, or is it going to be for somebody to fix and flip? And then the last thing would be is, let's figure out what the value is. So this is kind of like our kind of process that we follow in the order that we follow it, because if the first one doesn't
Okay.
doesn't check or the second one, then we're not even going to try to determine the value of the property because it doesn't fit the other criteria. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one. Now, with regards to finding buyers, so let's say you've run the ads, you've analyzed the deals using Zillow, and now you put a property in the contract. You send the contract to the seller. Everything is done virtually with the seller. So we use PandaDoc. There's a lot of other signature platforms available. That's just happens to be the one that we use. We send the documents to the seller, review the documents with them, and then go ahead and sign it. Now we get the contract back. Then the next step is now we got to get photos. Now at this point we get photos. So if we can get the seller to send us photos of the property, we will do that. Sometimes there might be photos of the property listed previously that are still accurate from the MLS, from Realtor.com, or somebody, if you search for the property online. If not, then we will use a service called HomeJab. So it's homejab.com, and then we'll go there. We'll pay for property photos. We'll get somebody over there. One thing is that when we're doing wholesaling, in our contract and agreement, we have a clause in there that says that our inspection period does not begin until photos are received by us from the seller. So that means that if we put an inspection period of 10 days, but the seller drags, they don't let us, if we send a photographer, the seller couldn't coordinate the door being open, and then now we got to send them back again, or it takes a week for us just to get photos. Our inspection period doesn't technically begin until we get delivery of the photos. So that's one thing I did not mention. In terms of finding buyers, there's a couple tools available. Um, there's a link that I have that will give you like a discount, or I'm not sure if you have one, Tomer, but there's $100 discount link that I have for the first month. There's two tools that we use for finding buyers. One is Investorbase, and another one is Investorlift. Some of you might already be familiar with Investorlift. Investorlift is pretty pricey. It's 6,000 for the year, but it doesn't include all the bells and whistles really that you need. To get the one that includes all the bells and whistles, that's the one that we have, and it's like $4,200 per month for Investorlift. So it's quite pricey. So if you're brand new starting in the business, it becomes cost prohibitive because you're better off spending as much as you can on the marketing to try to get seller leads. So a platform like Investorbase might be better for you. And Investorbase is $250 a month. So between these two platforms, we can go in and pretty much find a buyer for any property in the US, or for us to know if there's any buyers, because we could get a property and we're not really sure. So we'll look on either one of these two tools and see that, oh, there's no buyers. So why are we going to put this property in the contract if we can't even find a buyer? So, we want to kind of increase our probability of us being able to have success. Now, when we're speaking with investors, so this is our model. We're predominantly doing wholesaling. we do a novation. I don't know if you guys know what novations are every so often, but our model is different just because we can generate lots of leads, right? So we are not doing that many novations. But generally speaking, when we're selling the property, as an assignment of contract, we're typically are only working with experienced real estate investors. We vet the investors to make sure that they're investors that know what they're doing, that have been, know, have worked with wholesalers before, etc. And then, we prioritize a quality buyer over best price possible. But that means that if I have buyer A and I know he's experienced, he's bought in that town before, and he is offering me, he makes an offer where I'll make 15K. But now I have another buyer where, the buyer has never bought a property before. He's never dealt with a wholesaler, wet behind the ears. In that scenario, I might, depending on the price difference and the situation with that property, I may very much lean toward the sure thing. Will lean toward the buyer that I know is going to go ahead and perform rather than take my chance on the buyer that isn't going to perform, right? And again, when we're communicating, when we're reaching out to the buyers, I always find that it's always helpful just to be as transparent as possible, right? So it's like, hey, John, my name is Cris. I'm a national property buyer. I'm a real estate investor and a wholesaler, and I have a contract on a property near one that you purchased, and I'm looking to assign that contract. And are you buying any more properties in that area? They say, yes, I'm always interested. Okay, great. Let me tell you about the deal. And then ask them, you ever work with a wholesaler before? Yes, no, okay. And then gauge the interest. And now, if you're in a smaller town, the smaller the town, the more that they might say, oh no, I've never worked with a wholesaler before. Um, there was one that I spoke with the other day that said that kind of caught me off guard because most people know wholesaling. So it kind of led me to be a little bit careful about that particular buyer because he may not know exactly how we do things, and so I might be more inclined to work with somebody else who has worked with wholesalers. And again, it's not a selling; it's more of a presenting. Here's the deal. Here's the specifics. Here's what we think it's worth, and then see what they say. If they're interested, you schedule the showing. One important thing, which I didn't mention here, it's always good to also in this scenario because you're dealing in a market that you don't have any experience with. So you're going to make some assumptions about the value of the property that may not be accurate. So you want to be able to ask the investor if they're not interested. Okay, is there any particular reason why you're not interested? They might tell you, oh, the property is located in this area in this town. It's just horrible. Or they might say, no, it's just too much. And then you find out from them, okay, is there a price that you would consider this property at? Sometimes they say, no, you can give me this thing you could give me this thing for free, and I still wouldn't take it. That means that's a bad deal. So you might have to cut that. But they might say, well, if it was 100K, then maybe I'll do it. And then now at that point, then you might have the ability to go back to the seller, get a price reduction, and make that spread on the property. So you always want to be able to walk away from that conversation with the property owners, you know, gauging where they would be at. Because also too, like let's say you have a property and you're speaking with you have 5 buyers you're going to call. It doesn't You don't have to tell the same price at buyer number one as you would buyer number five. If you talk to buyer number one and you're trying to make a 30K assignment and the buyer number one tells you, oh, that area is really bad, and here's the reasons why. You take it with a grain of salt, but you might adjust. Now, when you talk to second buyer, you might reduce your price just a little bit because that might be an issue, or you talk to the second buyer and he tells you the same thing as the first buyer. Now they kind of correlate with each other, so now you know that one is not full of it. They're telling you the real deal. And now when you talk to buyer number three or the buyer number four, now you might reduce your price because now you have more information. So when you're keep that in mind, right? It's not an all or nothing proposition. You can always readjust. And then when you're talking with the buyers, and then and you tell them, hey, what would you pay for this property? And let's say they say, oh, I'll pay 100. Then depending on your spread, even if you have enough of a spread, you can always just say, hey, listen, I wish I could sell it to you for that much, but I have it in the contract really high. So what I can do is I'll keep you in mind in the event that I'm able to get a price reduction on the seller, then I can always come back to you. And that way, when you come back to the seller, come back to the
לא, כי
buyer,
אני יודע
you
שאתה
come
צועק,
back,
אתה
you
מאוד
come
מאוד
back to,
קשה לתכנן,
oh,
אז
let me see, somebody is not muted. Um, you come back to buyer under the umbrella of, hey, I was able to get a price reduction instead of, oh, I haven't been able to sell the property, so I'm coming to you to see if you might want to buy it, which then in that case now they're not gonna, give you as much as potential you can get. So here's I'm just gonna go through an example deal. So we did a deal in Temple, Texas. Um, Temple, Texas is between Waco and Austin. So it is a smaller market, but still, let me see what it says here. What the population size? I don't know if I put it there. It's a small area. This is a deal that came in. They were asking 60,000 on the price. We looked on Zillow, and Zillow had an estimate of 129, for the property. We take Zillow with a grain of salt, but still, we always, that's a good lead, right? Zillow saying 120, owner's asking 60. And then what we did is this is the property, right? So you can tell it's pretty beat up, our typical type of house that we would want to buy. And then in that particular area, we could see that there's activity, right? Temple, Texas, lots of properties active, lots of sales. And on this one here, we negotiated the price from 60 to 35 on that particular deal, right? Again, they were already a good price, got them just a little bit lower. And then our assignment on that deal, we ended up making, we were trying to get more, but in the end, we didn't. It looks like we had it listed for 70K. This is Gene on my team who did this deal. And so we ended up making a $15,000 assignment. Yeah, but again, it's a relatively like small town, right? It's not a big metro area, not an area that we would have considered doing a deal. Just happened to be that a lead came in from that area. Here's another deal in Bryan, Texas. So Bryan, Texas, kind of it's not a major metro, but it is a kind of middle market. This was the house here, and then if you could see where Houston is on the lower right, so Bryant is more, you can see toward the to the northwest of that. And the one thing I didn't realize at the time when the lead came in is that actually it's there's a big university there, Texas A&M University. So it's a little bit deceiving. It's small in geography, but a large student population. So we saw a lot of activity in the market. When we looked at the pending versus sold, you can see on the right 1492 total inventory, only 1,096 of that inventory is active, meaning the rest of them are pending. So if we do our calculation here of let me see if we do a calculation of what is this 1492, hold on a second. 1492 minus 1,096. So there's a total of 396 properties pending. 396 divided by 1492, 26% of the inventory in the market is pending. That's good. And generally, I like to see 20% at a low, 30 closer to 30% is great. This is good. So that's a sign of a good market. And then this was a joint venture deal that we did with one of our clients. So in the end, just looking at here on the right, this is the information that the owner supplied: a two-bedroom, two-bath. Um, and I was just trying to see, father is ill and wants to toward the upper right of the slide. It says father is ill and wants to move in with father to take care of him, and father lives in a different city. Um, yeah. So one of the things is this. You see the comment on the bottom. Additional comments. He was trying to work with some other guy to sell his home, but the guy kept on rescheduling to see the home. And I want to make a point on that because regardless of whatever you're doing, right, whether it be lead generation online or any other method, speed is important because, if you got a deal, always err on the side of putting it in the contract, being as quick as you can about it, because you could easily lose a deal because somebody else comes into the mix, and that is regardless of whatever the method you're using for marketing. So always assume there's always investors swirling around, and all it takes. I had a client last month. One of the deals that he did was for 24K, and the only reason he got that deal is because the he talked to the property owner. The property owner said, "Yeah, I'm talking to another investor." My guy asked him, "Well, why did you sell to them?" I said, "Well, the owner said, I'm gonna go ahead and they said they were gonna get back with me on Monday after they did their analysis." And my guy was like, "Okay, if we can agree on price today, are you willing to move forward?" And he was like, "Yeah, I'll move forward." So he got that deal for no other reason that he was okay with hey, let's go ahead and get it done right now. So he sent in the contract and he got the deal done. So you want to make sure that you are not um you are not that's my dog. I don't know if you guys can hear my dog. Um I gotta send a message to my daughter telling her okay. Sorry about that. Um on that particular property, the Zillow value was 176. That was what the Zillow value was. And then we had put it on the contract for 61,000. And then we sold it for 87,000. So that was our share of the deal. So that was, a little bit over 12, a little bit over $24,000 or so on that particular deal, right? That came in. Now this is an interesting one. This is a mobile home. So the mobile homes are good if they own the land, because if they don't own the land, they're really just a motor vehicle, not real estate. So this one, they have to have owned the land. We do a lot of mobile homes in the Carolinas and also in Florida. Um, and that lead came in. Um, and so this is a good example. The lead came in at 521, and then it was put on the contract the same day. This was by Gene on our team, and then sold a few days later. So I mentioned this because number one, speed to lead. Lead comes in, you got to get them. If you see a good lead come in, got to get on the phone with them as quick as you can. This is regardless of whatever the lead channel is, but with online leads are coming to you, so you want to get them while they're hot. And then also too, once you have, if you get the deal right on the front end in terms of the actual value of the property and making sure you get a good deal, then we sold it right away. We sold it 3 days later, or fairly quickly, right? And again, on this particular deal, it was online lead generation, 1 day from conversation to contract, and then 3 days to get the property sold. There you have it. I hope you got a lot out of this training. Two things to do. Number one is click the link in the description to get help from me to help you build this real estate business, or go ahead and click on the video that appears here or there that will give you the 3 most important things to building the ultimate real estate lifestyle business with high profits and low stress.